For decades, India's Army, Navy and Air Force have fought under three separate command structures. Each service has had its own operational commanders, its own planning process and its own chain of command. But that could change soon. After nearly 20 years of deliberations, India is now on the verge of implementing what could become the biggest military reform since independence: the creation of integrated theatre commands. The proposal is expected to be placed before Defence Minister Rajnath Singh by the Chief of Defence Staff, General N.S. Subramani. So what exactly changes? India's military operates through 17 separate operational commands, 7 of the Army, 7 of the Air Force and 3 of the Navy. Under the proposed system, these service-specific commands will gradually give way to integrated theatre commands, where a single commander will control the Army, Navy and Air Force assets assigned to a particular theatre of operation. In simple terms, if a conflict breaks out along the western border, just one theatre commander will direct land, air and maritime operations under a single battle plan. The proposal envisages 3 major theatre commands: a Northern Theatre Command focused on China, a Western Theatre Command for the Pakistan front, and a Maritime Theatre Command responsible for securing India's interests across the Indian Ocean region. The objective is modern wars are no longer fought separately on land, at sea or in the air. Today's battlefields combine missiles, drones, cyber warfare, electronic warfare, satellites and artificial intelligence, all operating simultaneously. However, the reform has not been without challenges. The Indian Air Force has consistently argued that its relatively limited fighter fleet should remain centrally controlled rather than permanently allocated to different theatres. There have also been complex discussions over command authority, logistics, strategic assets and inter-service coordination. Even so, much of the groundwork has now been completed and the proposal is set to have the backing of the military leadership. So the question is, will theatre commands make India's armed forces faster, stronger and better prepared for future wars? Now, without wasting any more time, let me introduce my panel and we will have a sort of a longish conversation. Lieutenant General Chauhan, former DG Assam Rifles, thank you so much, sir. Air Commodore Dr. Ashwinder Singh Bahal, thank you, sir. And Captain Alok Bansal, Executive Vice President of India Foundation. Thank you so much, sir. Let me begin with General Chauhan. I'll go to then Dr. Ashwinder Singh Bahal and then to Captain Bansal. General Chauhan, my question is theaterization an Indian reality? Let me begin this conversation like this. Does India need theaterization?
Good afternoon, Karthik. Of course it needs. If we have to fight any kind of war, we have to fight it together. And we know for certain that we're going to fight in different theatres. That's for certain. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We also know for certain that at the present moment, the Northern Command was looking after both the Pakistan front and the Chinese front. The Eastern Command was looking after the Chinese front. The Western Army was only looking after the Pakistan front. That is as far as the army is concerned. And so it was similarly with the Air Force and Navy, looking after separate capsules of their own. The idea is that any future war gives you very little time to react. It also gives you just nanoseconds for decisions. So you cannot wait for a decision to come from outside. You have to have a single theatre fighting a single war at the same time with his resources so that he can put them fully into battle. The more we delay the decision-making process, the more are the chances that your entire system will break up. So it's definitely an Indian reality. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Okay, so it's an Indian reality. Dr. Bahal, your opening comments. Why do we need theaterization of our military, and what has been the perspective of Air Force on it?
Very nice, sir. Give me a few minutes on this because this is a longish type of answer. First thing is, there is no doubt, I totally agree with the general to say that there is an immediate requirement of theaterization, primarily for two reasons. Till now, we have been having joint planning because I was myself part of College of Air Warfare as well as of operational commands where I did the planning. The planning is being carried out independently and it is a joint planning, which means the Army, Navy give their requirements and we try to dovetail it within the requirements, within the operational philosophy of the IAF or of the three services. So first and foremost requirement is integrated planning. Second is because that enhances the speed of decision making also. The second and very important thing is that today the wars are being fought in multi-domains, right? From space, air, land, sea, subsurface. And when we integrate all the elements, it is the best element because the asset now forms part of the theater commander, which is the best asset to be utilized to take on the particular target system with the most cost effectiveness and with greater efficiency and effectiveness. So every asset is part now of the theater command as that has been allocated to that theater. The third and important thing is that when we are carrying this out, the aim is to quickly make the enemy dysfunctional and therefore focus more on functional paralysis rather than focusing on extreme destruction like the American Air Forces and the American warfare does. And at the same time, achieving the aim and objectives of our own forces with minimum collateral damage. Fourth thing is that we require air defense, not to allow our own assets to get shot down. It could be fratricide on ground, it could be fratricide in air or on sea. So prevent fratricide, it is extremely important for theaterization. Last thing which is extremely important for this before I go on to the Air Force view is that it is extremely important that sensor to shooter time gets reduced to the minimum, and that can only get reduced to the minimum if there is one decision maker. So whilst accepting all this, and let me tell you this, I was the first person to write a paper on integrated theater commands in 2006-7, which was published in India Strategic Journal. And one of the first few to write on this and compare the American 11 combatant commands, 5 theater commands of the Chinese today, but earlier there were 7 military regions, and also the Australian theater commands, and then come out with the solution that was best suited for the Indian contingent. Now, what is the problem? I'll tell you the problem areas. Okay. The first problem is the first CDS that became was General Bipin Rawat. We are having a third CDS, currently General N.S. Subramani. And earlier, when we used to have integrated chiefs of staff committee and you had chairman chiefs of staff committee, we had a rotation where you had the Army, Navy, Air Force come in rotation, whoever was the senior most, and all three of them, and yet we won the 1971 war and we won the Kargil war also. Now, and we were able to evict. But why is it that 3 CDS have gone through and not the Air Force or naval officer has become? And are we saying that we don't trust our own Air Force and Navy commanders? Are we saying that they are less capable than the Army? And as you can see, the way I discuss with you major issues which belong to the 3 services, including the ballistic missiles and electronic warfare, cyber warfare, that every officer, every commander in the armed forces is as capable, and it is not just the Army that is capable. They are capable, no doubt about it. But so is the Indian Air Force commanders, and so is the Indian naval commanders. And this creates doubts and suspicions into the mind. Is there a hidden agenda? Why every time there is a army officer who's become the CDS? The second and important point is that over a period of time, there has been a reduction in the fighter squadron strength. 42 was authorized. It got reduced to 39 and a half squadrons, and in the last 12 years, it's come down to 29 squadrons, out of which there are a total of 12 squadrons that are obsolete, virtually obsolete with 30 to 35 years. Remember, we were discussing the Jaguar accidents and other accidents that are taking place. Now, when we are having a strength of just barely 17 effective squadrons, out of which 2 are Mark 1 LCA, which is not right now fully capable to take on a 4th or a 5th generation warfare, we are looking at a much reduced strength of fighters and also of other assets. And when we going to break it down into theaters, remember, If there is a Northern Command theater, it is going to be the Chinese threat. If it's a Western Command, it's going to be Air Force. It is being said that Northern Command will be the Army. It is being said Western Command will be the Air Force, and Maritime Command will be the Navy.
Okay.
Now, this sounds very logical to me because of the nuclearized environment and the predominance of the lead services in this area. But I want to say one thing. Even though there may be a Chinese threat and we are having a Chinese war, but still we have to have deterrent forces being deployed for Pakistan, and similarly for vice versa also. This means that as it is, we are having reduced strength. Now we are going to reduce it further, and this deterrence versus punitive threat that we are going to carry out the attacks or going to carry out combined integrated operations. But there is a solution, and next time when you come up, I will discuss with you the solution which I had said 20 years back, but is still not been brought into place.
Okay, Captain Bansal, your thoughts? Last time I was discussing this with General Chauhan. We agreed on one point, that though theaterization is important, but the inception is lodged in the globalization of the American military, where it's like Marine Expeditionary Forces, where they required everything at one point of time. So does it cater to the Indian reality? Is it a response to what the PLA is doing in terms of theaterization? Your opening comments, sir.
See, firstly, as India rises and India emerges as not only a regional power but strives to become a global power, theaterization is an inevitability that you cannot deny. In fact, though I have serious problems with the way theaterization is being processed, having just 3 commands, I think it's stupid, actually. You can have one theater for Pakistan, but having one theater for North, ranging from Jammu Kashmir to Arunachal, to my mind is stupid, actually. There needs to be also an Eastern theater. You don't know, because when you are trying to become a global or a regional power, you may have threats emanating from anywhere. You may be required to move in. Similarly, in the maritime arena, Andaman and Nicobar should be a theater by itself, actually, because not only are you taking a point of view of defense, but Indian Navy as a net security provider, and now Indian military forces should be the net security provider. So you would probably need one for Bay of Bengal, one for Arabian Sea, and one maybe for expeditionary forces. Having said that, the problems as far as theaterization are concerned are, firstly, the dissimilarity in sizes. Today, Army is many times larger than Navy and Air Force combined. Now, you can't err that, you can't find fault with that, because the way India's military has evolved, we have had problems of insurgency, we have had borders, threats across land borders, and as a result, Army has grown. Now, what is required is that you need to do some sort of a thing. So maybe we should consider making Marine Corps as well as airborne infantry. That could be done, so that some amount of, I'm not trying to say that the forces would become equal in size or something, but at least some sort of a similarity comes. I am totally against having this Western with Army, Northern with the Northern with Army, Western with Air Force, and Maritime with Navy. I think this sort of a system or a rotational system is absolutely wrong. Even in CDS, it has to be by selection, and selection of the best men. There can never be that only Army will have the Northern Command or Air Force. This is absolutely stupid. The third problem, and the biggest problem, is that ideas are good, but the implementation gets spoiled. You say CDS was created. Under CDS, there was supposed to be an IFS officer. To date, they have not been able to position one, because the bureaucracy won't accept it. Now, if you actually want to have theater commands like American, US Pacific Command, US Atlantic Command, you should have a diplomat, you should have people from other services also functioning under the commander, which in India, it will not happen, because
Mr. Bansal, before theaterization, do we require reforms in the civil-military relationship?
Undoubtedly, that is, of course, a crying need that nobody can deny. Is there anybody who says that that is not needed? That is needed, but that requires an enormous political will and control over the bureaucracy, which I think is not easily feasible. But having said that, when you are talking of theaterization, I think creating just 3 theaters, to my mind, is not right. And what happens when you theaterize? What happens? You created an Andaman and Nicobar Command. None of the services are willing to provide it assets. Only Navy has some assets. Air Force has not increased one bit. Army has not increased. The one brigade which existed, and that brigade is also depleted brigade. So that's how it has remained. So unless, of course, you have the services mindset also has to change. Today, a service officer has hardly any understanding of the other services. You do staff college, you do some courses, that's about it all. But does an army officer know how does a ship function, or does a naval officer go and on ground? Admiral Vishnu Bhagwat at one stage had started a system whereby a naval officer on commissioning used to go and spend time in Jammu and Kashmir with army units. Now, that some sort of a cross attachment is required. There are a lot of naval pilots who go and serve with Air Force and others. But otherwise, the basic understanding of army tactics, the
Okay.
naval tactics, is still lacking, and that factor is a very, very major issue. And while theaterization is absolutely welcome, but we need to have, firstly, far more theaters. We also need to have integration, not only of the three services, we also need to have certain civilian, the defense account chap should come under it, the foreign service, because now if the maritime arena, if you are moving around, you need to have a diplomat to understand how to deal with the
Okay.
things, because at sea, you will be meeting ships from other countries.
Okay, okay. Let me also introduce Wing Commander Dr. Bhushan Devan, sir. Thank you so much for joining me at this short notice. Your opening comments on theaterization, which is about to happen. So my question is, have we arrived at the right time? Do we really need this sort of a theaterization? Can there be an Indian version, subcontinental version of theaterization? Do we really need an American version or the PLA version of theaterization? Can there be a Bharatiya version of theaterization? Let me put it in a very simplistic way, sir.
Yeah, possibly we are behind schedule because this matter has been in the works for the last 20 years, and we will have to have our own version because our problems, our issues are unique compared to anybody else in the world. Of course, the U.S. services are worldwide because they have got interests where they go on all over the world for their work. But in our case, even when localized within the Indian subcontinent, we have different kind of terrain, we have different kind of issues. Therefore, there is bound to be a change thinking, and it will evolve. As of today, this is the first time that we have started thinking about the theatre command, which is a welcome move. There have been a lot of discussions and divergent views, and I think particularly the Air Force at one point of time was much against this concept because the resources are limited. But considering today the space technology, the satellites, the missiles, everything is now showing the concept of the warfare itself has changed. And assets which particularly used to be part of the Air Force are now with all the three services. The Navy itself has got the aviation corps, plus they've got the drones, missiles, so has the Army. So it makes sense for us to go for a theatre command. As one of them pointed out, that there need probably be another jugaad into this, probably Eastern theatre, considering that today the Eastern theatre also has become very important. And till date, we had only one theatre command in the Andaman and Nicobar, which did not really have much teeth. But I guess now with our concept, our change of our mindset, and at least to be in the subcontinent a force to reckon with, which we are today, it will be an evolving situation and a welcome move. And maybe we will consider our own unique situation, and maybe another command or two might come into force as and when we have the resources. It will be a challenge, but it's an evolving situation, and I am sure the thinkers will come out with some more suggestions as we go along.
General Chauhan, military strategy is always in response of desired political outcomes or imminent threat to the sovereignty of the country. The only theaterization which has happened on the boundary of the nation is China. Can you just tell us about how PLA has theaterized because that is the response we have to build on. There is no theaterization when it comes to Sri Lanka. There is no theaterization, I think, in Pakistan. There is no theaterization in Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. There is no theaterization in Maldives. The PLA has theaterized. How have they theaterized? And our single theater response, is it okay? General Chauhan?
Karthik, that's a very interesting question because strategy is always based on being a bridge to what you want and what resources you have. That's the process of how you create a strategy. And what is our bridge? where are we willing to go and how far are we willing to go and what are the resources we have are the two factors that we are keeping in mind at all times. While I agree with Ashwinda Behel, Bansal and Wing Commander, the issues are like this, that when you're fighting, supposing you're fighting a war against China, that is, you're looking at the complete Eastern Command or the Northern Command that we're calling it, which is going to be and always should be army commanded for the reason that the large land borders that are there, where very large number of troops are on the border. That is the kind of command that is required because you have borders that are at present not sorted out, and that's why you will always have to look at the line of control, the line of actual control, etc. Similarly, when you go to the Western Army or Western Theater Command, you're looking at a totally different theater. And that is where it can be Air Force led. That is just to answer Ashwinder. And of course, the balance, as we talked about the Maritime Command, we will of course have to grow it after a certain stage. But at each point, we cannot take the American example of the theater command that the Americans have because they are an expeditionary armed force. They're an expeditionary country. They don't fight in their theater. They always move out much beyond the Pacific to fight in the Indian Ocean or to fight in the Atlantic Ocean, and they've always done that. And for that, they have much larger systems, much larger capabilities, much larger resources that we have. But to fight within our systems and to fight a joint threat of Pakistan and China, which is likely to be there in any war from now on with Pakistan and China, we need these two theaters as well as the maritime theater to be operating based on single commanders. Because reactions, as Ashwinda said and I had said earlier, are in nanoseconds. And the only way for us to save ourselves from any kind of resources is that to save ourselves and utilize the resources the best is to make sure that resources are always available. And as Ashwinda said, it's because the Air Force has less resources at the present moment. You probably can't divide it into systems. And that is why you are, taking it back to what we started with is how do we have a theater command that suits us? That's the main issue. Can the Navy be divided? Can the Army be divided? Can the Air Force be divided? We realize the Air Force can't be divided.
Okay. Dr. Bal, how has PLA done this? How have they divided their assets?
Yeah. So PLA is basically geographical commands. It's not like Americans, which is both geographical and functional. Functional means the space command, the electronic warfare command, the special operations command or transport command, cyber command. So they are not like, they are divided both geographically as well as functionally. Whilst the PLA is mostly geographically. It is, in fact, only geographically. Eastern Theater Command is Taiwan, East China Sea, Japan. Southern Theater Command is South China Seas and Southeast Asian nations. The Western Theater Command is where India, Tibet, as well as Central Asia and Xinjiang come in. And Northern Theater Command is Korea and Russia. And Central is Beijing, which mainly looks after the reserves. So now, when we are looking at their 5 theater commands, they are geographical. Now, in India also, we are looking at it more like geographical, but related to the threats that they are posing. And I tend to agree with General that we would have to look at the entire Northern Command as one theater, and we have to look at Western Command at another theater, which the Air Force could look after, Northern being the Army, and Maritime, which includes the Andaman and Nicobar Command, incidentally, could be looked after by the Navy. But we need to have more commands. We need to have Space Command, though we have a Defense Space Agency. We need to have, Cyber Command. We need to have these commands, and that too, they need to come up very quickly. But what my solution is, if I were, and this is the same solution that I gave 20 years back. See, because the Air Force will always be limited because of the high value of the assets, whether they are airborne early warning systems, air-to-air refuelers, electronic warfare aircraft, fighter aircraft, that we need to have an integrated strategic theater command at the top. And then you have these 3 or multiple commands, including the functional commands, later on. And therefore, there is a centralized allocation of resources depending on the situation that is coming in. What we need is an integrated strategic theatre command at the national level. In any case, that should be there. Then you find these three theatres, and now we come down to the centrally located resources such as AWACS, airborne early warning systems, or air-to-air refuelers, electronic warfare, transport aircraft. They could be kept centrally at the integrated strategic theatre command. The last thing that I want to say is that we need to shed our inter-services feelings, and we need to look at the threat as a whole. And then we need to look as a threat as a whole and devise a military strategy that will
I think
make
that's,
sure.
you're being very polite. You're being very polite to use Mr. Bansal when Dr. Bahal said inter-services feelings.
See, I think the way our training pattern is actually, it doesn't expose one to other services.
Really?
Except
Is it
at a
correct,
very
sir?
higher level.
Is it correct?
And I have
But
a
don't
serious
people get?
disagreement.
But sir, don't
I
people
have-
get trained in NDA, Khadagwasla?
Let me come to it, Karthikeya. We are all trained in NDA. I am also from NDA. I have studied in Sainik school also, so don't worry. That's not the point. But that's your basic training. As far as tactics is concerned, you are actually not trained together. Your exposure to each other is limited. Unlike US, please understand, US had a system that you cannot be promoted unless, of course, you have done a joint services appointment, so many joint services appointment, which we have not insisted. We try and send people who are not good into the joint services organization. You try to retain the best people. And I have a serious disagreement with General Chauhan on one issue. He says army chap should be controlling the northern because he'd understand the intricacies of the army. If that is the premise, then the whole thing is flawed. Then theaterization goes 6 for a 6. Because that means only army chap will understand the army tactics, the air force chap will understand the air force tactics. So that means for an army operation, he'll be incapable. So why should you position him? Then the theaterization falls. The whole premise of theaterization is that at the apex level, the leader should understand all the three services equally well. And that is his capability. And that should be his capability. And if he can't understand, then I think it's failure. With his advisors, with his support staff, he should be able to understand the intricacies of Army, Navy, Air Force, everything, and even the other forces that are there. So that would have to come about in that way, and that's where I have a problem. Earmarking a particular theatre to a service is absolute no-no. It has to be by selection. I have no problem if all three of them are army officers. If they are, that should be by selection. If they are the most capable ones, yes. But please select everyone and choose out of them. If Army, Navy, Air Force, select everyone. It could be all three Air Force, it could be all three Navy, but select the best people. Because that person should have had exposure to all services, go through his background, do an interview, select the person. Because having just an army chap there, if he has no exposure to Air Force or Navy, probably be a failure. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. It has to be the best person. Rotation never works. Rotation is bad.
Okay.
That's
okay. You're saying rotation never works. Dr. Bahal wanted to come in, and is it possible for one person to have that sort of a deep exposure of all the three services? I want to know as an outsider.
Yeah, it is possible primarily because, like, I was deputy commandant at College of Air Warfare. I was also chief instructor at Army War College, and I've been giving lectures for College of Naval Warfare repeatedly. On various issues of integration with the Navy, especially on fratricide, when we found that fratricide was very large when Navy was, utilizing the air power. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is, though I feel that yes, merit should count, but I personally feel, because I've been to each and every place with the army commanders in the north, right, whether you look at Arunachal Pradesh or whether you look at Ladakh, right up to Pongangso Lake. Now, what I personally feel is that in Northern Command, the army is the best because it's mostly going to be a foot warfare, which will be supported by the Air Force, and Navy is now relegated right down south. Now we come to the second aspect of Western theater. Today, in the nuclearized environment, there is a primacy of aerial operations, whether they are drones, missiles, or fighter aircraft or others. And hence the logic that the general was giving, I personally agree with that logic, that the lead service here should be the Air Force because of the reasons that a large scale ground operations in a nuclearized environment are unlikely to take place. And lastly, when we talk of the maritime boundaries, Andaman and Nicobar Island, right now it is in rotation. All three are Army, Navy, Air Force commanders are there. But I personally feel that it is best handled by the Navy. Last thing I want to say is that we should inculcate the theaterization in a phased manner and not that we jump in quickly. Let's first do for Western Theatre Command, then Northern Theatre Command, and finally for the Maritime Command. This is my opinion, so that then we can go on to functional commands.
Okay, before I take a closing comment from Dr. Bhushan Diwan, General Chauhan, would you like to respond to, I'll come to you. Would you like to respond, General Chauhan?
Yeah, actually, my response would be that, Ashwinda, thank you. We agreed on a very important factor that you see that there are different kinds of battles fought in different theaters. Captain Bansal will agree with me that the northern theater would see changes in 1 or 2 kilometers because the line of actual control is disputed there. It's a disputed border. So often the battle might be at platoon level, might be at a battalion level at the maximum. And there is where the idea that you have served in a particular place gives you an idea of what exactly to do because the changes are going to happen like what's happening in the Ukraine front with Russia.
Okay.
Last 4 years, you've just moved 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. That's the kind of battle that is likely to be fought in the northern theater. Now, in the western theater, as Ashwinda said, it's absolutely correct. There, it's an aerial primacy. And the idea that you are able to carry out an aerial primacy battle, because that is how you're going to win this war. You're going to win it through the air, you're going to win it through the Navy, and you're going to win it through the Army. But different kinds of war are being fought in different places. That's the main thing.
Okay. Sir, you have 30 seconds and I'll take closing comments from Dr. Bhushan, Dr. Diwan.
I just want to say, if you have to grant primacy to one service, the whole concept of jointmanship is defeated. A theatre commander need not bother about a platoon level thing. He has got formations under him to take care of him. The theatre commander has to. So, to my mind, the moment you relegate merit under the garb of anything, under rotation, under anything, you have actually destroyed the jointmanship. It has to be merit, merit, and merit alone.
Okay. Dr. Diwan, your closing comments, sir.
Yeah, I think going forward, there will be a lot more permutations and combinations. I would expect that there will be a cyber command, which is common to all the things. And also the Navy probably will make it a dominant role in the southern sector, that is the Maritime Command. There could be one location in Lakshadweep also, because we've got a large maritime assets and borders that we have. And therefore, I would imagine that there will be far more expansion in the maritime area, and the Navy probably will have a dominant role in the Maritime Command. Could be split into two locations, including Lakshadweep, apart from the Andamans.
Okay, thank you. I never thought that there will be so many differences of opinion, but will be put in front of my viewers in such a polite way. It was genuinely my pleasure to have all four of you in this conversation.